the biggest thing is that when I was a pastor in the city, it became clear to me that the solution to the trauma in the city was male leadership, spiritual male leadership in the home and in the community and in the church. As I met men who didn't believe in Jesus, what I said to them very early in the relationship was, I don't want to be your woman's pastor or your children's pastor or this community's pastor. I want to be your pastor. I want to talk to you about what it is to be a biblically informed, spirit-driven man of God, that you know how to be a leader in your home and in your community. And if any man let me get that much out of my mouth, I had him hooked deeply. He and I were like connected at the hip from that point forward. So that was my curriculum for 21 years at Garden Homes, was male leadership development and getting men excited about being leaders in their community and seeing how that changed the community. So I was always like interested in that thing that I do now. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not talking to a man in one continent or another who's either like half my age or older than me, or even like 1/3 my age, that they want to know how to be a good pastor. They want to know how to preach law and gospel. They want to know how to be a good evangelist. They want to know how to survive the challenges being posed to them at that time. They want my prayers. They want my help. They want my support. They want my friendship. They just want my affirmation. They want me to be there with them as they go through incredibly difficult challenges in a African refugee camp, or in a village where the Buddhists are beating up their family members, or if they're a 22-year-old junior at Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary, where they're afraid to open their mouth on any social topic because they're going to get smacked down by a community that doesn't want to hear it. So I'm doing what I've always done, but with a lot more intentionality, with a lot more specificity. Talking to people that want to represent Jesus to the world has always been my highest privilege. What values are you modeling for your congregants? You are going to shape them. How are you intentionalizing that shaping? Are you aware of that shaping? Every single Sunday before you start your greeting of the folks and preaching to the folks and loving the folks, are you aware of the fact that people are learning from you how to be a human, how to be a Christian, how to be a Lutheran by watching you? So I think, how do we help the people in our congregation become disciple makers? Well, how about be one? How about be a disciple maker? How about being a disciple maker a very, very high thing on your priority list? Yeah, keep it simple. I was invited to advocate evangelism to a youth group, which for me, that is scary, Nathan. If you want to make me shut up about Jesus, threaten me with an audience of 16-year-olds going through existential crisis. But invited to go talk to this group of 15 and 16-year-olds about evangelism. I showed up early and I was just hanging out, and I asked them, so what video games are you guys playing? And we were just talking about video games, and about 20 minutes after the hour, somebody said, but aren't you going to talk about how to share your faith? And I said, we have been the whole time, man. I just asked you to tell me about what you cared about, and you were chirping like birds on a beautiful spring morning about how cool some weird video game is because it can blow up more of the enemy than the previous versions of the game. So you just illustrated everything I can possibly teach you about evangelism begins with what are you excited about? And then the next layer of curriculum is before anyone gets nervous about this, how to become an evangelist thing, before we start that conversation, I just have one question for you. What's your favorite story about Jesus? Just like somebody share with me your favorite story about, so somebody will tell me about little boy Jesus in the temple and his mother finding him. Or someone will tell me about the feeding of the 5,000. They'll do such a beautiful job. Because one thing Lutherans can do is tell Bible stories, right? I mean, from little on, you guys were trained in Bible stories. And I said, wow, that's really cool. Tell me your favorite story that helps them understand what Jesus did for us. So someone will go, they'll talk about Calvary, or they'll talk about Jesus said, well, to Peter, well, your confession that you just gave, that came from the Father, Peter, and it's on this rock I'll build my church. They'll tell me amazing stories about that really capture what Jesus did for us. And I say, well, I think you guys don't need to be trained how to be an evangelist, because you just told me 16 stories about who Jesus is. You just told me 16 stories about what he's done for us. And when I take somebody out to show them how to do evangelism, I'm waiting for an opportunity to start asking someone if I can tell them a story. I love talking to Muslims about the difference between Christianity and Islam, and I usually begin this way. Can I tell you a story? You know how many times a Muslim has told me, no, you can't tell me a story? It's never happened. It's never happened. And I tell them a story of, for example, I want them to know the heart of God. So I'll tell them the story of the two sons, the younger son that squandered his father's money, and the older son that was kind of ticked off about that. And you know what people always do when I tell them that story? They say, thank you. They say, thank you. Thank you for telling me about the heart of the Most High God. A guy called me up. Let's just say his name is Terry. I'll just say his name is Terry. He called me up and he said, hey, Pastor, this is Terry. I want you to be my pastor. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy, That's kind of crazy, Terry, because I had taken him through the Bible information course 4 times. And every time I took him through the Bible information course, the only thing he wanted to talk about was how little I understand about what it means to be a Black man in America. So I listened to an awful lot of those stories of him trying to help me understand that, because I knew that if he kind of like wore out talking, I could talk about Jesus, but to no avail. So, and I knew him for 15 years, and after 15 years, he fell away. In a sense, I lost touch with him. Out of the blue, he calls me up and he says, I want you to be my pastor. And I think, okay, well, this is cool. Let's get to it. Why though? And turns out he had earned himself a case of cirrhosis of the liver with his hard living. And the doctor told me he had 6 months to live. So now I had him it wasn't 6 months as it turned out, but I had him. And he turned out to be like one of the best Bible students I ever had. He married the woman that had borne him 4 children. He was an articulate witness. In private moments, he would grieve having thrown his life away by not, paying attention to one of the 4 previous times. 15 years ago, I was trying to do the same thing with him. But for those 6 months, Terry and his extended family, all of whom I knew, Terry and his whole extended family had a deep coming to know Jesus moment, and he was the leader of it. He was the author of it. So he went from becoming the absolute worst example to a shining, bright example of what it meant to be a spiritual leader in his home and in his community for a few months, and then the Lord took him home. Those are the kind of stories that you guys are adding to your portfolio now, and those stories they'll be like grandchildren. They'll keep you company in your later years.